All right. Are we live? I think we're live. All right. Let's see. Okay. Great. All right. Sweet. Do I have any viewers yet? This is the question. Chat is disabled for this stream. I don't want that. Let's see. Concurrent viewers. Let's see. I'm sorry if you're watching this is my first time streaming. I want to get chat turned on in case people want to use chat. Let's see. Sorry about this. 1 second. Live chat is disabled. Oh. All right. Well, anyway. Hopefully people are watching. I'm getting texts now. Oh, man. Yeah. I really wanted to turn on chat. All right. Well, it looks like I have one viewer. That's good. Anyway, yeah. Welcome. I'll get started in a little bit. I'll give people time to show up. We'll probably get started, properly at 10 after 7. I wanted to allow chat for this, but it looks like I set it to like kids. This is a kid-friendly stream, which apparently automatically disables chat. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, welcome. I hope you're having a good night. If you're in Halifax, I hope you're prepared for the storm and hunkering down. Let's see. 3 viewers. All right. Cool. Let's see if I can change this. 1 sec. Okay. And then does that mean I can turn on chat now? 1 second. It's just okay. Okay. Oh, there you go. All right. I think chat is working now. Let's see. Test. All right. If anyone is watching, okay, we got some viewers. Anyway. Yeah, so, oh, 1 sec, sorry. Jeez, this is terrible. Oh. Let's see. Oh, I'm getting texts here. 1 second. You can see we can't unmute it. No. Okay. Let's see. 1 second. Hey, Matt. Matt's in the chat. Nice. There we go. All right. Can you hear me, Matt? Am I... There we go. All right. Heaven sent law. Oh, I wonder who that is. All right. We got chat. Good. I have feedback. Oh, can people tell me, like, is my sound okay? Can you... is everything, can you hear me okay? Can you see the Faith Friday screen? Yes, okay. All right, beautiful. All right, we got viewers. We got some viewers. I'll give people a few more minutes to show up. Maybe I'll start at like 10 after. But Oh, nice, Mark. Sweet. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. Oh, anyway, so yeah, it's fine. Okay, things are fine. Good, good. All right. Yep. Streaming is odd. I've never. It's odd, just sort of, you know, talking to your screen. But oh, nice, sweet, Torpix. Hi, Torpix. Hmm. Awesome. Beautiful. All right. Yeah. Wow. Welcome to Faith Fridays then. Oh man. Yeah. So yeah, for the Ontarians and the non-Nova Scotians, there's a hurricane about to hit us. So, although it's heading more towards Cape Breton, so yeah, you know, we'll get something, but we'll see how bad it is. But anyway, everyone is sort of panic buying a bunch of snacks and everything. Oh, nice, Andrew. How's it going? What up? All right, this is good. I'm glad we have chat. Welcome, welcome, everyone. I'm glad you could join. How's everyone's Friday going? Four concurrent viewers. Do. Whoops. Oh. Busy. Is there a delay on the chat? I wonder. Hurricanes. Yeah, maybe I should. I wonder if I can, like, charge devices at the nearest hospital. Okay, good to know. I'm hoping it's not too bad yet, so I'm hoping we don't lose power during the stream, but I don't think we will. Oh, good. Mom's on. All right. Excellent. Delay. Yeah, it seems like there's a delay. I wonder if I can. Okay, let's see. One sec. Let me see if I can change the delay. Message delay. Second. No, I don't see any. I don't know. Seems like there is a delay, but I don't know how to. I don't know how to turn it off. Anyway. One sec. All right. What time is it? I'll wait like another minute and get started. But again, thank you all for joining. Appreciate it. And yeah, feel free to say, feel free to be active in the chat. Ask any questions you want along the way. Two concurrent viewers. Time we got. All right. Well, 10 after. All right. I'm just going to get started. And I mean, it's going to be recorded anyway. So to those of you who joined, thank you. Really appreciate it. Welcome. Okay. So welcome to what I'm calling for now Faith Fridays. The first episode of which is titled Of Mice and Miracles. So, let's see. Where's my mouse? Yeah. All right. So, what? Anyway, yeah. What's all this? What is all this about? Why, why have I called you all here today? Yeah. So, basically, yeah. I mean, you know, as of a year ago, before this year, I would have, I would have called myself a very strong and very convinced atheist. My mom is asking how to get active on chat. I don't know if you're on your phone, Mom. I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. It might be tricky on the phone, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah. All right. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, I would have called myself. Yeah, I was a very strong, very convinced, very staunch atheist. I was just very, very sure that God didn't exist. And this year, my entire life is changed, and as of now, I'm a devout and committed Catholic. I go to Mass daily, and God willing, I will be devoting my entire life to Jesus Christ. So it's been quite the year, and it's a big turnaround. And to anyone who knows me, or has known me for my life, it's probably has come as a big surprise, or at least it's surprising, right? So, and for a while I was sort of closed off, and I didn't know how to talk about it. So, but I wanted to start this up basically because I imagined people were curious, and they would sort of want to hear like, all right, what's the story? Why this sudden and massive change? So, I don't know exactly what this. I want to make this into a weekly thing. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. In part, it will be me sort of telling my story of what was it that brought me here to Catholicism? What was it that convinced me that I was wrong? What changed my mind? So, in part, it will be me telling my story, and in part, that will involve sort of the things that changed my mind along the way. And so, in part, it's going to be about showing you those things, and so showing you the evidence. And so, in some ways, it'll be about making the case for Catholicism, for Christianity in general, and then Catholicism. But my aim here is not really to this isn't really about evangelization. I'm not trying to not exactly trying to convince people. I don't think it really works. Basically, I don't think you could do it if you wanted to, and you probably shouldn't do it if you could. But I guess if I have a goal, it's to sort of open your mind and hearts to the possibility that Christianity is true. It is not to sort of jam Christianity down your throat. It's to just say, all right, here's some evidence. Maybe it'll give you pause and make you think, and make you hopefully open to Christianity in a way you weren't before. But like I said, it's not sort of the goal isn't sort of straight up evangelization. So it'll be in part my story, in part sort of talking about the kind of things that changed my mind, and also I'd like it to be in part a kind of a it's all about information and education. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, so also I want this to be about explaining the faith, sort of Christianity 101, Catholicism 101. I had a very surface level understanding of Christianity beforehand, and it's I'd like to help people sort of, if that's what you have, I'd like to help you sort of go a bit deeper, because it's incredibly deep and rich and beautiful. So, so that is sort of the vision for what this is going to be. I don't know exactly, but that is the rough plan. So We'll see. But I guess to start with, I mean, you guys watching this right now all know me, but this will be a recorded video, so whatever. I'm speaking to, anyone and everyone. So, yeah, so my name is Stephen Foster. And yeah, my background, I was born and raised in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where I currently reside. I would say that I was raised Catholic, sort of, nominally, in the sense that basically, my mom made me go to church. I had to go every week, and I hated it. I thought it was boring. I resented it. And I don't really, even as a kid, I don't really remember believing in God. It's hard to know, I guess, but as a kid, I don't really remember ever believing in God. But by the time I was a little older, like 12 or 13, that had turned into sort of a positive belief that there was no God. At that point, I was already an atheist, or I at least called myself an atheist. But I still had to go to church. That was sort of the rule in the house. The rule in the house was you had to go to church until you were confirmed. So if you don't know Catholicism, confirmation is. Oh yeah, good point, Matt. All right, I moved it up to the top to. Oh jeez, one sec. Yes, it is. Thank you, Matt. I moved it up to the top because it was blocking the email, but that's a better place for it. Anyway. Yeah. So, so anyway, confirmation is where you're sort of confirmed as like officially Catholic as an adult. So it happens when you're, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, something like that. Anyway, so I had to get confirmed. I was already an atheist at this point, but whatever. My mom was sort of said, just go, come on, just go along with it. And so I went along with it. I said the words, and so, thank God I did. But so anyway, I was, I guess you could say, a confirmed atheist. But basically, as soon as I was confirmed, I was, done with church. I was out the door. And I was, a typical nerdy type kid. Shy, not that many friends. Liked math and science, Star Wars, that kind of thing. So, prime atheist material. And I went on to study physics. So, studied physics in undergrad. Went on to do a PhD, which was very disillusioning, and I produced a very mediocre thesis, and that was an interesting time in my life. And then I went on to become a programmer, moved back to Halifax. So yeah, that's sort of the basic story. And I guess along the way, I never really had any cause to doubt. Yeah, I never doubted my atheism at all, in the slightest, up until this year. I was, like I said, very, very convinced that God didn't exist. So yeah. Let's see. So, I guess if we're going to talk about like why, the story of how I came to be Catholic, I guess the question is, why was I an atheist in the first place? Why was I so sure that God didn't exist? Why was that? It's an interesting question. So, in a way, it's a question that's not any different from any other question. So, the question you always have to ask yourself for any belief, I guess, is what world am I living in? Right? Sort of the fundamental question of belief. It's like, if you want to know if something is true or not, what do? You say, all right, well, I don't know if I'm living in a world where it's true or a world where it's false. It could be in either. So you say, all right, what would the world look like if it were true? You say, all right, well, I would expect this and this to be true. I would expect to see this and this. I would expect to not see this and this. And you say, all right, well, the world looks more like it's true than false, or vice versa. So, okay, well, what about, right, so apply that to atheism. I mean, what world am I living in? Are we living in a world where God exists, or a world where God doesn't exist? And I think, as a kid and for most of my life, I would have said, well, like, obviously one where God doesn't exist, right? I mean, I think I would have just said, yeah, well, just look around you. Like, this just doesn't look like a world where God exists, does it? So why would I have said that, though? I think, especially as a kid, I think that as a kid, you're struck by how, like, the world is very, I don't know, the world just seems very mundane, doesn't it? Like, as a kid, you sort of grow up hearing these stories of, magic and mysteries, and, like, there's unicorns and dragons and potions and spells and magic and all of this, right? And then you find out that, okay, no, none of that's real. We just live in this kind of boring world, a mundane world, right? A world without magic. And so I think that's, yeah. A mundane world. Yeah, so I think you end up sort of saying, all right, you look at this world and it seems mundane, seems there's no magic in it, and it just seems to sort of follow laws, right? Just seems to follow rules. As a kid, you don't know what they are, but it's just kind of like, yeah, this is just boring old reality. Everything follows rules. Nothing sort of special, supernatural, mystical ever happens, right? And this is sort of just, yeah, okay. And then, so, you can see that even as a kid, but then if you go on to study physics, well, it's, then that view is sort of reinforced even more strongly. Like, of course, there you don't just sort of know that the world follows rules. You get to see what the rules are. So here's the math, and you end up with a picture of the world that is extremely mechanical, right? Like, the world is just following these ironclad mathematical rules without exception. Every instant of time follows inexorably from the previous instance, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I would say, in the end, yeah, so in the end, I mean, you look around at the world, you look at the world around you, and you say, okay, we seem to live in a world that is basically mundane rather than mystical, mindless rather than mindful, and mechanical rather than meaningful, right? Like, ultimately, it just seems, yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of comes down to the fundamental nature of reality being impersonal versus personal. Is reality at its core sort of, just mindless, just, math doing its thing, churning through equations, or is it mindful at its core? Is it personal? And for most of my life, when I just looked out at the world around me, well, it seemed like we were living in this top world, not the bottom world. Yeah. So, all right. I mean, yeah. So that's more or less why I was an atheist. It just looks like a godless world, or it did anyway. So I guess the question is, what changed? what actually changed? For years I had this worldview, this atheistic worldview, sort of a materialist worldview where, you know, physics is ultimately all there is, and sort of we came about due to evolution, and so you know, we're essentially this sort of cosmic fluke, right? We just kind of happen to evolve, and there's no sort of higher ultimate purpose, higher meaning, just beyond whatever meaning we create for ourselves. It's just sort of, well, we just happen to exist, and that's all. And I guess what changed is that starting sort of early this year, that worldview kind of that worldview always seemed to explain everything. Like it was, it it did its job, but all of a sudden I sort of started to notice more and more holes in it, and I started sort of, I guess you could say, what did I say? I don't know. Okay, I guess the bottom line is, I mean, this is kind of like a long story, and probably I'll tell it piecemeal over the course of many of these. But I guess what I would say is that earlier this year I found myself sort of open to spirituality for the first time in my life. Just a tiny bit. I had always resisted, anything spiritual extremely strongly. I was sort of allergic to it, because I don't know. I had seen so many people sort of, if you let spirituality into your brain, it kind of, for some people, your brain falls out. You end up believing a lot of crazy things. And I suppose some people would say that's what happened to me. But for the first time in my life, I was sort of open to spirituality, just a little bit, just like, okay. And then what happened was I started to notice things, or I started to have odd thoughts. I found myself sort of oddly thinking about Christianity, unexpectedly. So I, little things at first. I sort of noticed all of a sudden that all of my favorite authors throughout my life, my favorite books, had all been written by Christians, which was like, oh, okay, that's weird, I guess, but whatever. And there was a bunch of sort of little things. Christianity was just all of a sudden just generally on my mind. But then all of a sudden I was struck by a very strong and inexplicable desire to go to church. And I had no idea why this was. And again, I had always kind of hated church as a kid. So, but yeah, all of a sudden I was just like, I thought about the idea of going to church, and I was just like, yes, oh, wow, I really I would love that. What is up with that? And just in general, Christianity was sort of more and more on my mind. I couldn't really explain it. I didn't know why, but I was like, okay. I figured it was just some sort of, there was some spiritual hole in me that and I'm just sort of plugging it with the, religion of our, of this, that I grew up with, basically. But anyway, so I did have this strong desire to go to church that I couldn't explain. And so eventually I started going. But along the way, I started to look into Christianity. I started to worry that, maybe I hadn't sort of given it a fair shot. I had thought that it was sort of just obviously untrue, and that I had sort of refuted it years ago. It was just, But I started to look into it, and I realized that, maybe I hadn't given it a fair shot. Maybe I had been sort of relying on the fact that everyone else thought it was stupid and sort of just, you know, instead of actually refuting it myself, I had just sort of assumed it to be refuted. So I started looking into it. I started reading, books about Christianity. And, I found myself getting sucked in a little. Saying, okay, this is interesting. There's something here. This is cool. But what really, at first this was just sort of like, okay, so this religion has some depth to it. Okay, that doesn't, it's interesting, it's rich, but that doesn't make it true. But what really sort of, actually changed things, the thing that sort of like, really shifted me on the course to like actually becoming Christian, was seeing miracles. So I started to look into it, and there was a lot of sort of claimed miracles in Christianity, some of which I had kind of heard of before and dismissed, and some of which I hadn't heard of. But when I started looking into them, now with sort of new eyes, where I, would previously have dismissed them, now I all of a sudden found them sort of a lot harder to refute, and a lot harder to ignore. And so I was, said, oh, like, some of these were sort of, they basically made me sit up and say, oh, okay, like I can't ignore this. This is something interesting. So, yeah, basically what I want to do, I guess, for the rest of the talk is just show you one of these. I want to talk about sort of this. This is a very famous, famous event, famous claimed miracle. This was one of the first things that sort of like really, I wouldn't say it sort of like just suddenly made me Christian, but it really shifted my thinking. It really made me say, okay, I can't ignore this. Let's, I want to talk about Fatima. I don't know if you guys have heard of Fatima, but this is Our Lady of Fatima, and the Miracle of the Sun, as it's called. So, Fatima is, so anyway, the events of Fatima took place in, the events that we're talking about here took place in 1917. And Fatima is just a small village in the countryside of Portugal. And the events in question involved these three little children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta. Francisco and Jacinta were brother and sister, and they were cousins to Lucia. The events involved these three little kids. So, this is a very long story. I would love to tell all of it, but I'll just give sort of the basics. It's an incredible story. But so the basics are, in 1917, these three children started claiming that they had received visitations from the Virgin Mary, that the Virgin Mary was appearing to them and talking to them. And they claimed that this was happening to them once a month. It was happening on the same day every month. People, of course, didn't believe them. They were met with sort of skepticism and, mockery at best, but a lot of hostility. The people of the village were extremely hostile. They, both from the religious community and the non-religious community. The religious people thought that they were lying, and the non-religious community sort of thought that they were sort of making it up. But anyway, Anyway, so yeah, they were the whole town more or less was against them. Their parents were against them, but they wouldn't sort of everyone was trying to get them to admit that they were making it up, admit that they were lying. Like the priests, the priest tried to get them to admit this, and they wouldn't budge. Uh, and then this this part is crazy. Like you couldn't like make this stuff up, but at one point, the mayor of the town actually kidnapped these three kids. He kidnapped them and put them in jail, and he separated them. And he told them that they were going to be boiled alive in oil if they didn't, admit that they were making this up. At this point, it had caused quite a stir. They were very famous. And they believed it, but still they wouldn't budge. They would not admit, they wouldn't change their story. So, yeah, it is very hard to doubt the sincerity of these three little children. They were incredibly, incredibly brave. So I mean, they at least sincerely believed that they were being visited by the Virgin Mary. Anyway, so their lives are sort of more or less miserable at this point, because no one believes them, and they're just being constantly mocked and all of this. So what happens is the next time the Virgin Mary appears, they plead with her. They say, "All right, can you give us a sign? Can you a miracle, so everyone will believe us." And eventually they're told that yes, okay. The Virgin Mary says to them, a miracle will take place on October 13th at noon. Okay. So yeah, anyway, what happens is the kids tell everyone this. They say, okay, there's going to be a miracle here at this time. And like I said, by this point, they're pretty famous at this point, so basically on this day, tens of thousands of people. Some people say it was up to 100,000. Some people say 70,000. But tens of thousands of people show up to see if this miracle will happen. So yeah, this is yeah. So the question is, I guess, what would you expect to happen? I find myself thinking about, all those stories about, all those cults that talk about like the end of the world. They predict the end of the world. There'll be some cult leader who says, okay, the world's going to end on this date or whatever, and the cult will all prepare for it. And, what always happens inevitably, of course, is that the world doesn't end, and what happened? The cult leader, comes up with some excuse and says, "Oh, well, I miscalculated" or whatever, and then they usually they'll make up some due date or whatever, where now the world is going to end this day. So I don't know. This is what always happens, right? There's these predictions of miracles. Nothing happens. People make excuses, and yeah, and the world goes on, right? So the question is, what would you have expected in this case? I'm sorry, okay. So I guess the question is, imagine you're there that morning, so there's, these girls are, claiming to have been sort of visited by the Virgin Mary for months. They say there's going to be a miracle this day. What would your prediction have been if you were there that morning? And I mean, obviously, that I'm giving this talk, so clearly something happens. But, I mean, I think I know what my prediction would have been when I was an atheist. It's just that, nothing would happen, right? Like, miracles aren't real. Nothing would happen. The kids would, everyone would go home disappointed. The kids would, come up with some excuse, say, "Oh, well, you didn't pray hard enough," and then whatever. That would have been my prediction. So, what actually happened? Well, yeah, so I think here I'll just, I'll just quote some eyewitness accounts. So this is on October 13th at noon, just when the kids predicted that something would happen. From the height of the road where the people parked their carriages and where many hundreds stood, afraid to brave the muddy soil, we saw the immense multitude turn towards the sun at its highest, free of all clouds. The sun called to mind a plate of dull silver. It could be stared at without the least effort. It did not burn or blind. It seemed that an eclipse was taking place. All of a sudden a tremendous shout burst forth. Miracle, miracle, marvel, marvel. Before the astonished eyes of the people, whose attitude carried us back to biblical times, and who, white with terror, heads uncovered, gazed at the blue sky, the sun trembled and made some brusque, unheard-of movements beyond all cosmic laws. The sun danced is the typical expression of the peasants. Immediately afterward, the people asked each other if they saw anything and what they had seen. The greatest number avowed that they saw the sun trembling and dancing. Others declared they saw the smiling face of the Blessed Virgin herself. They swore that the sun turned around on itself as if it were a wheel of fireworks, and had fallen almost to the point of burning the earth with its rays. Some said they saw it change colors successively. That one was from a newspaper. We could look at the sun with ease. It did not bother at all. It seemed to be continually fading and glowing in one fashion, then another. It threw shafts of light one way and another, painting everything in different colors, the people, the trees, the earth, even the air. But the greatest proof of the miracle was the fact that the sun did not bother the eyes. Everyone stood still and quiet, gazing at the sun. At a certain point, the sun stopped its play of light and then started dancing. It stopped once more and again started dancing until it seemed to loosen itself from the skies and fall upon the people. It was a moment of terrible suspense. Okay, that's, interesting maybe. Let's keep going. The sun was sometimes surrounded by blood-red lanes. At other times it was aureoled with yellow and soft purple. Again it seemed to be possessor of the swiftest rotation, and then seemed to detach itself from the heavens, come near the earth, and give forth a tremendous heat. Immediately the sun came out with a well-defined rim and seemed to come down to the height of the clouds. It started to rotate intermittently around itself like a wheel of fireworks for about 8 minutes. Everything became almost dark, and the people's features became yellow. All were kneeling in the mud. The sun's disk did not remain immobile. This was not the sparkling of a heavenly body, for it spun round on itself in a mad whirl when suddenly a clamor was heard from all the people. The sun, whirling, seemed to loosen itself from the firmament, and advanced threateningly upon the earth, as if to crush us with its fiery weight. The sensation during those moments was terrible. As if like a bolt from the blue, the clouds were wrenched apart, and the sun at its zenith appeared in all its splendor. It began to revolve vertiginously on its axis, like the most magnificent fire wheel that could be imagined, taking on all the colors of the rainbow and sending forth multicolored flashes of light, producing the most astounding effect. This sublime and incomparable spectacle, which was repeated 3 distinct times, lasted for about 10 minutes. The immense multitude, overcome by the evidence of such a tremendous prodigy, threw themselves on their knees. Interesting, no? This is not sounding like nothing. This is an interesting one. The sun had an eccentricity of movement. It was not the scintillation of a celestial body at its highest power. It was rotating upon itself with exceedingly great speed. Suddenly the people broke out with a cry of extreme anguish. The sun, still rotating, had unloosened itself from the skies and came hurtling towards the earth. This huge fiery millstone threatened to crush us with its weight. It was a dreadful sensation. During this solar occurrence, the air took on successively different colors. While looking at the sun, I noticed that everything around me darkened. I looked at what was nearby and cast my eyes away to the horizon. Everything had the color of an amethyst. The sky, the air, everything and everybody. A little oak nearby was casting a heavy purple shadow on the ground. Fearing impairment of the retina, which was improbable, because then I would not have seen everything in purple, I turned about, closed my eyes, cupping my hands over them to cut off all light. With my back turned, I opened my eyes and realized that the landscape and the air retained the purple hue. This did not give the impression of being an eclipse. While looking at the sun, I noticed that the air had cleared, and I heard a peasant nearby say, "This lady looks yellow." As a matter of fact, everything far and near had changed now. People seemed to have jaundice. I smiled when I saw everybody looking disfigured and ugly. My hand had the same color. The silver sun, enveloped in the same gauzy gray light, was seen to whirl and turn in the circle of broken clouds. The light turned a beautiful blue, as if it had come through the stained glass windows of a cathedral, and spread itself over the people who knelt with outstretched hands. People wept and prayed with uncovered heads, in the presence of a miracle they had awaited. The seconds seemed like hours, so vivid were they. This is another interesting one. At noon, we were startled by the cries and exclamations of the people going by the school. The teacher was the first to run outside to the street, with all the children following her. The people cried and wept on the street. They were all pointing towards the sun. It was the miracle promised by Our Lady. I feel unable to describe it, as I saw it and felt it at the same time. I was gazing at the sun. It looked so pale to me, it did not blind. It was like a ball of snow rotating upon itself. All of a sudden it seemed to be falling, zigzag, threatening the earth. Seized with fear, I hid myself amidst the people. Everyone was crying, waiting for the end of the world. Nearby there was a godless man who had spent the morning making fun of the simpletons who had gone to Fatima just to see a girl. I looked at him and he was numbed, his eyes riveted on the sun. I saw him tremble from head to foot. Then he raised his hands towards heaven as he was kneeling there in the mud and cried out, "Our Lady, Our Lady." Everyone was crying and weeping, asking God to forgive them their sins. After this was over, we ran to the chapels, some to one, others to the other one in our village. They were soon filled. And then on that day on October 13th, 1917, without remembering the predictions of the children, I was enchanted by a remarkable spectacle in the sky of a kind I had never seen before. I saw it from this veranda. These two are particularly interesting because these didn't take place in Fatima. These ones were in separate villages, over 10 kilometers away from Fatima, which, should maybe give you pause. That's interesting. And then a few more. Yeah. We made our arrangements and went in 3 motor cars on the early morning of the 13th. There was a thick mist, and the car which went in front mistook the way, so we were all lost for a time and only arrived at the Cova de Iria at midday by the sun. It was absolutely full of people, but for my part, I felt devoid of any religious feeling. When Lucia called out, "Look at the sun," the whole multitude repeated, "Attention to the sun." It was a day of incessant drizzle, but a few moments before the miracle it stopped raining. I can hardly find words to describe what followed. The sun began to move, and at a certain moment appeared to be detached from the sky, and about to hurtle upon us like a wheel of flame. My wife, who had been married only a short time, fainted, and I was too upset to attend to her, and my brother-in-law, Joa Vassalo, supported her on his arm. I fell on my knees, oblivious of everything, and when I got up I don't know what I said. I think I began to cry out like the others. An old man with a white beard began to attack the atheists aloud and challenge them to say whether or not something supernatural had occurred. The sun turned everything to different colors, yellow, blue, and white. Then it shook and trembled. It looked like a wheel of fire that was going to fall on the people. They began to cry out, "We shall all be killed." Others called to Our Lady to save them. They recited acts of contrition. One woman began to confess her sins aloud, advertising that she had done this and that. When at last the sun stopped leaping and moving, we all breathed our relief. We were still alive, and the miracle which the children had foretold had been seen by everyone. Okay. Now, so that is some pretty striking testimony. I think you must agree with that. We have a case where there was a miracle predicted, and, for once, rather than nothing happening, rather than disappointment and excuses, we have some very, very striking testimony. We have testimony of something dramatic happened, something something that people thought was apocalyptic, and they all agreed that they all said they all said that the sun the sun turned into a spinning disc. There was you know crazy colors, and then it danced in the sky, and then it detached itself and came down to the earth. Um, and most strikingly, people saw this in different villages. People saw the same miracle in different villages exactly when these little children predicted there would be a miracle. This is, you know, certainly very striking. I hope it gives you pause at least. Like, I wouldn't have expected this exactly. All right. So, what are the explanations offered? Skeptics, of course, have proposed explanations for this. The first one that's offered that people often say is that this was just sort of a mass hallucination. That there was sort of like this strange collective hallucination going on in the field at the time. So, I mean, first of all, I would say like that just doesn't hold up because, like I said, people saw it in different villages. So that kind of rules that out right off the bat. They saw the same miracle involving the sun. But more than that, mass hallucinations just like they're not really a thing. Like they don't exist. I mean, sort of not both. They're not a thing in sort of the psychological literature, but just commonsensically, a mass hallucination is where people are seeing the same hallucination. I mean, that's kind of how we know that something is real. Like, if I'm looking at something, I say to someone beside me, like, hey, do you see that too? I'm like, yeah. This is how we know that things are real. And I mean, if we're proposing that people can sort of have sort of shared hallucinations without talking to each other, they somehow see the same hallucination despite no communication between them. I mean, it's more or less saying that there would have to be some kind of impossible psychic communication between them, right? In order for them to the information to be shared, for them to be seeing the same hallucination. So, mass hallucination, as far as I'm concerned, is just another name for miracle. It's if you believe in a mass hallucination, then you just believe in sort of that a miracle took place. But some people don't say, okay, they sort of say, okay, yes, not a mass hallucination, but there could have been some kind of mass hysteria, right? Like this was a religiously charged, environment. People were expecting a miracle. Through the power of suggestion, maybe people sort of convinced themselves that they were sort of all seeing this miracle. So again, I would say that is more or less ruled out by the fact that people saw it in, separate villages that were more than 10 kilometers apart. Multiple different villages, not just two. So that kind of, it kind of just rules that out right off the bat. But even so, even if it were just in one field, I think that is ascribing powers to the power of suggestion that just really don't exist. I mean, I think what people are talking, if you talk about this kind of sort of power of suggestion, I think what people are talking about is sort of, there can be a thing where sort of people are together and they're looking at something. There's, maybe they see something vaguely. They're like, oh, I see a light, and someone else is like, oh yeah, do I see it? Oh, maybe I do see it too. And there's this kind of like feedback that leads people to, convince each other that they're seeing something, right? But that is sort of a very nebulous, slow process. Like it involves people in close communication. You can't just like make someone see something dramatic through this sort of magical power of suggestion. It's not really a thing. And I mean, if you look at what we're actually talking about here, tens of thousands of people in a field, they all of a sudden saw something. They all of a sudden said, miracle, miracle, like gasped, So there's not really time for this kind of suggestion to spread around. Like, oh, did you see, there's something in the sun? Yeah, I see it too, This was, tens of thousands of people. all seeing something very suddenly, something very dramatic, something undeniably dramatic, awe-inspiring, terrifying. I mean, these people thought the world was ending. So yeah, I think that just again, it's we have people in different villages sort of seeing the same miracle, so that kind of rules it out anyway. But even then, I think to say to say that this would be some kind of mass hysteria, I think is just ascribing powers to the power of suggestion that it just really doesn't have. So some other people say that okay, there was sort of some kind of atmospheric phenomenon which just coincidentally happened to happen at this same time, and it was just a a minor normal thing, but then it got caught up in the religious atmosphere. So this is sort of a similar thing. There is this sort of a similar kind of mass hysteria or power of suggestion or hypnosis, whatever you want to call it. But this time it was keying off some minor atmospheric phenomenon that happened. And similarly, people sort of say that these people were staring at the sun for a while, and so that can damage the eye. So maybe people were sort of seeing retinal after images, and that was that looked like the sun dancing, or their eyes were tired after this, or something like this. So these last two explanations are more or less I think what skeptics would sort of put forward as the explanation for this miracle. I have to say I do not find them particularly convincing. So I don't know. Okay, so here's one example. This is skeptical investigator Joe Nickell wrote that the dancing sun effects reported at Fatima were a combination of factors, including optical effects and meteorological phenomena, such as the sun being seen through thin clouds, causing it to appear as a silver disk. Other possibilities include an alteration in the density of the passing clouds, causing the sun's image to alternately brighten and dim, and so seem to advance and recede, and dust or moisture droplets in the atmosphere, refracting the sunlight, and thus imparting a variety of colors. Nickell also suggests that unusual visual effects could have resulted from temporary retinal distortion, caused by staring at the intense light of the sun, or have been caused by a sundog, a relatively common atmospheric optical phenomenon. Nickell also highlights the psychological suggestibility of the witnesses, noting that devout spectators often come to locations where Marian apparitions have been reported, fully expecting some miraculous event, such as the 1988 Lubbock apparition of Mary, the Mother Cabrini Shrine near Denver, and Converse, Georgia. Okay, so yeah, this is what I would call sort of a grab bag explanation. It's kind of trying to throw a bunch of things at the wall and see what sticks, but I think if you actually really look at this and read the actual testimony, this explanation is terrible, I think. So, okay. There is just I guess there's a thing that I see in the skeptic community, which is a community that does some good, but even as an atheist, I can't say that I ever really liked the skeptical community. I do not think that it is a truth-seeking community. And what I see often in the skeptical community is people looking to sort of explain things away. Something happened, and it sort of is a typical thing that a skeptic would want to dismiss, like a miracle or whatever. And so they'll settle on an explanation that basically just how to put it? Just an explanation that more or less just allows them to stop thinking about the phenomenon in question. Just, okay, this is good enough. This is like, I've said something like sort of vaguely plausible. This is, and the explanations proposed do not really even try to actually explain what happened. I guess what I keep coming back to, I have this image of like, okay, like imagine for a second that you had seen Bigfoot, that you were, in the woods, say with your friends, and you had, actually seen Bigfoot. It was incredible. He was really close to you. He was, 20 feet away, and you could see him standing there. It was very clear. He was, breathing. You could see him breathing. So, you say, oh my God, this is incredible. And so you go back to tell people. You're like, look, I saw Bigfoot, and people are skeptical, of course. They're like, well, and they try and come up with explanations. And they say, well, could it have been, maybe there was like an escaped gorilla or something from the zoo. You're like, well, no, I don't think I could have mistaken, gorilla for Bigfoot. They don't really look the same, but yeah, maybe. Or people say, could it have been someone in a Bigfoot suit? You say, no, I don't think so. It really didn't look like that, They looked, incredibly real. So, these are sort of maybe reasonable explanations. But imagine then that someone comes up to you and says, well, are you sure you didn't see a mouse? And you sort of maybe do a double take. You're like, I'm sorry, a mouse? Like, yeah, maybe instead of seeing Bigfoot, what you saw was, a mouse. And you say, yes, I'm quite confident that I, did not mistake a mouse for Bigfoot. And they start saying, like, well, like, are you sure? There's like, maybe you were expecting to see Bigfoot. The power of suggestion is very strong. Like, maybe you just sort of mistook this mouse for a mouse for Bigfoot. And you would say, yeah, no, I know that the power of suggestion is very strong, but yes, I'm still pretty sure and confident that I did not mistake a mouse for Bigfoot. This is the vibe I get from a lot of skeptical, explanations that are offered for unexplained phenomena. Is it an exaggeration? Maybe a little, yeah, but not that much. Like, okay, let's just really look at this. So this is the proposed explanation. The proposed explanation is that, let's see, an alteration in the density of the passing clouds, causing the sun's image to alternately brighten and dim, and so seem to advance and recede. So this is the proposed explanation. He's saying that nothing was going on, that all that was happening was, while these people were sort of screaming and thinking the world was ending, they were seeing spinning discs and, the sun was dancing around. He was saying what was happening was that some clouds were going in front of the sun. And so it became a little brighter and a little dimmer. And so that's what made people think that it was, kind of coming down to the earth to kill them. I have to say, like, no, let's go back to some of these descriptions. The sun, still rotating, had unloosened itself from the sky and came hurtling towards the earth. This huge, fiery millstone threatened to crush us with its weight. Oh, it started to rotate intermittently around itself like a wheel of fireworks for about 8 minutes. Everything became almost dark and the people's features became yellow. All were kneeling in the mud. I have to say, no, that does not sound anything like, even remotely, like the sun just sort of passing in front of some clouds. If you just read these descriptions, which all basically agree with each other, they all agree that, that the sun danced, there was a spinning wheel, it came down to the earth. They do not sound at all like this explanation. Like, just not even really close. And I don't think that if you were sort of really honestly trying to come up with an explanation for what happened, you could think that this was a plausible explanation. This is just something that, you know, is sort of proposed to sound plausible enough to say, okay, well, we have an explanation. We're good. You know, we've explained the miracle. Great. You know, I mean, and you know, Nickel also highlights the psychological suggestibility of the witnesses. I don't know. Noting that devout spectators often come to locations. You know, devout spectators. Okay, well, you know, what about that skeptic? Nearby there was a godless man who had spent the morning making fun of the simpletons who had gone to Fatima just to see a girl. I looked at him and he was numbed, his eyes riveted on the sun. I mean, he doesn't seem like he was expecting a miracle. He doesn't seem that devout. Or, you know, this guy who sort of calmly turns his back to confirm that, you know, it was not something retinal. He sounds very cool, collected. He doesn't seem in a state of, you know, religious hysteria. He seems to just be calmly looking at a miracle that's happening. Yeah, this explanation just really, it does not resemble, you know, what is described in the eyewitness accounts really at all, I would say. It's not even close. And I mean, okay, look, here's the thing. I think for like any successful theory, like a big theory, like atheism or something, like a worldview that you have, like any successful theory, has to be given some leeway, right? Like you can't just sort of be expected to abandon it at the drop, you know, like the first time you encounter some anomaly. Like this is, you know, maybe some anomaly where it's like, okay, I wouldn't have predicted this. But, you know, you don't just sort of say, okay, therefore, you know, immediately, just because of one anomaly that I can't explain, I'm going to throw away the successful theory. Like that makes a certain amount of sense. And so it is true that, you know, you give these theories some leeway, and so maybe sometimes you say, all right, I'm going to accept a not great explanation for some anomaly. You know, it's just because, like, okay, this is such a successful theory, otherwise I have to give it the benefit of the doubt. I can't abandon it super quickly. So, you know, that makes a certain amount of sense. But your theories, you know, have to bend, but there also has to come a point where they break. There also has to come a point where you say, you know, no, it wasn't a mouse though. Like, and I would say that, you know, if this is sort of the best explanation that can be offered, then, you know, this is a lot like saying that, you know, you could mistake Bigfoot for a mouse. I don't think that you could, someone could just have been looking at, you know, some passing clouds that caused the sun to brighten and dim and end up describing the kind of eyewitness accounts that we see here. Yeah, I don't know. Are you sure it wasn't a mouse? Okay, so, but there are some sort of, you know, is this just an open and shut case? You know, is this just a miracle for sure? I mean, I believe yes, but there are some things that skeptics will bring up that are sort of relevant to talk about for sure. So the first point is that apparently not everyone saw it. So, you know, the Wikipedia article says several people saw nothing. As far as I can tell, this is true. I've never seen any sort of quote like from an eyewitness who said they saw nothing, but, you know, I don't have any reason to doubt that some people didn't see it. You know, and so you could ask, like, if there really was a miracle, shouldn't everyone have seen it? Like, doesn't that kind of point to, like, oh, it's just all in everyone else's heads, you know? So to that I would say, you know, well, no, I mean, I think the idea that it is all in everyone's head is, like I said, more or less ruled out by people in different villages reporting the same miracle. But still, isn't it sort of suspicious or weird, you know? And to that I would say, you know, not necessarily. I mean, look, we're talking about miracles here. We are proposing that a miracle happened. And when you sort of talk about miracles, you know, some of the rules go out the window. God obviously could do whatever he wanted. So, I mean, um, it it is not a particularly strong prediction of the miracle theory that everyone should necessarily see it. Um, it could be that the people who didn't see it, their hearts were closed off to the miracle, or God kept them from seeing it for some, in his inscrutable wisdom, right? Um, so it is, not a super strong prediction that everyone definitely should see it, just that, some number of people should see it. Um, but, in contrast, it is a very strong prediction of the atheist theory that, no one should see a miracle, right? It should just, and here we have sort of, tens of thousands of people seeing a miracle, seeing the same miracle, at the same time, very dramatic miracle, So the fact that some people didn't see it, I suppose that, might bother you more than it bothers me, but I don't see that as particularly troubling. Similarly, there were a lot of cameras present. There was a lot of, journalists. This was, like I said, these kids were famous. And so there was a lot of journalists, of cameras there trying to, take pictures if anything happened. And so, there's no pictures of anything sort of crazy happening. Presumably a lot of pictures were taken and they just, don't show anything. So you might find that sort of odd and suspicious. Yeah, for this one I can imagine a couple things. I mean, I don't know how, these cameras would work in terms of, exposure. It could have been just that, as this miracle is going on, just the sky is so bright that it just sort of washes everything out. But maybe not that. Maybe assuming that the miracle sort of should have been able to be photographed. Why didn't it show up in the pictures? And again, I mean, my what I would say to that is, once again, we're in sort of miracle territory. There's no reason that God couldn't just sort of not let the miracle show up in pictures. It's certainly something he could do, and in a way, it actually does seem to me like something he would do, because I hear a lot of people say, let's see what we got. Could it be also people lie and exaggerate? I'll get to that, Matt. It's a fair question. Could it be that they're talking about lying and exaggerating? But I mean, my answer would be I doubt that skeptic who was making fun of everyone would be inclined to lie and exaggerate about a miracle. But anyway, so yeah, these pictures. A lot of people sort of say this. It's like, all right, if I need photographic proof, either I would have to see a miracle for myself, or I'd have to see a picture of something. Eyewitness testimony is not enough. But that's sort of there's something interesting there. Why exactly is eyewitness testimony not enough? And I think sort of the initial reaction is sort of like, well, then I can't be sure. If I see it with my own eyes, I'm sure, but if I just hear it from other people. No, that's sort of making it out to be like a quality of the evidence kind of thing. I get better evidence if I see it for myself. I don't know. I don't really think that's what's going on, though. I think, it's perfectly possible for eyewitness testimony to be overwhelming evidence, absolutely undeniable evidence. So in that sense, I don't really think it's about sort of the quality of the evidence. I think it's about wanting to not have to trust anyone. I think it's, people say, I want to look at a photograph because then I have evidence without having to trust anyone. And to that you might say, well, yeah, I mean, people are untrustworthy, right? That makes sense. Sometimes people lie and sometimes people exaggerate. But again, I'm not talking about when I say trust, I'm not talking about sort of blind trust or just, trusting whatever anyone says. I'm talking about, having any level of trust at all. I mean, just like a non-zero amount of trust, even the tiniest bit. I mean, I I don't know about you guys, but personally, like I find that, if you look at the eyewitness testimony here, involving tens of thousands of people, again, um, I think it's basically undeniable evidence. I think that there's no realistic way I could deny that something happened this day, exactly like those kids predicted. And so I think, like, there's the story of like doubting Thomas in the Bible. Like maybe you've heard it. It's like a famous story, right? This is after Jesus was resurrected, um, and and Thomas didn't believe that Jesus was resurrected. So he had to, finally Jesus showed up and allowed, showed Thomas his wounds, and Thomas sort of put his finger in them, and so now he believed, and the Jesus says to him something like, you believed, you believed when you saw, but like blessed are those who believe without seeing, or something like that, right? And I think that's, I think that story is sometimes misunderstood as sort of like advocating like just like blind faith, like just like believing for no reason, just like you're supposed to sort of arbitrarily convince yourself of some random thing because of no evidence. Which is not what the story is about at all. Like, what happened in the story was that the other apostles all told Thomas that Jesus had been resurrected. They all said, "Hey, yeah, we all saw him." The other 11 were like, we saw Jesus. He was resurrected. And Thomas didn't believe them. He said, "No, I need to see it for myself." And so when Jesus was saying, "Blessed are those who believe without seeing," what he was saying is, blessed are those who, trusted. He said, Thomas had been with these other apostles for years. He had every reason to trust them. All 11 of them unanimously said, "Yeah, no, we saw Jesus. He was resurrected." He was like, "No, that's not enough for me." So the story of doubting Thomas, I think, is a story not about blind faith at all, but just sort of trust and saying, yeah, I do have some bare minimum basic level of trust in people that allows me to believe things, even incredible things, without seeing it for myself. So anyway, the point is, with this case, if I try and imagine reasons why God might not have allowed the miracle to show up in pictures, I imagine it was something, sort of like well, people say, well, we need evidence to believe in God. Where's the evidence? And God says, yeah, okay, fair enough. Like, here's a miracle. Here's lots of evidence. Tens of thousands of people saying a miracle happened, right? And then people say, like, no, but I want a picture of it. And he says, okay, so you want evidence where you don't have to trust anyone. He says, okay, well, I'm not going to reward that level of mistrust. Like, I'm, no pictures allowed. It's just eyewitness or nothing. So I don't know, whatever. This is just sort of, who knows if it's that, whatever. But the point is, I don't view it as a huge deal that that this miracle did not show up in pictures. Like I said, we're in miracle land. There's anything goes. God obviously could have made it not show up in miracles for any number of reasons, not show up in pictures. But again, the hard thing to explain here is why so many people did see a miracle. Time and distance can turn this small. Hang on 1 sec. All right. Okay. Yeah. No. Let's not get to that first. So yeah. Where are we? Okay. So yeah. What's the basic story here is that I don't know. Maybe you are not convinced by this. That is fair enough. But this is sort of, I will say, you must say this stands in striking contrast to how these things normally go. Normally, there's a prediction of some kind of miracle or some kind of big event. Nothing happens. Excuses are made. Here, it is the believers who, at least at first glance, were very much vindicated, and the skeptics who were kind of forced to scramble and make excuses and come up with explanations that are pretty tortured, to be honest. So anyway, what else do I want to say? Okay. Yeah, so what to take for this? Okay, for me, basically, going back to kind of the story, this was something that I couldn't ignore. This was sort of fairly early on in my journey. And I found that, yeah, I couldn't ignore this. I could not in good conscience sort of say that, yes, these skeptical explanations are sort of satisfactory. I couldn't accept them. So anyway, I continued deeper into Catholicism, and I encountered, basically more and more things that I couldn't explain. Like there's lots more where this came from. There's a lot of other sort of anomalous things that I'll try and talk about in future weeks. Anyway, do I expect this to convince you? As I said from the start, I'm not sort of really, in a sense, I'm not trying to convince you. But anyway, no, I don't expect this to be sort of convincing, really. But like I said, I do hope this sort of at least gives you pause a little bit. Sort of say like, yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't have really expected this. There's explanations maybe, but it's not what I would have expected, at least offhand. That's sort of all I'm really hoping for here. What else? Do we want to get to that? What else was I going to say? I should also say, like, when I talk about how terrible these skeptical explanations are, I should be clear that I am indicting myself as well, because the thing is, I had heard of Fatima as an atheist, years ago. I had read the Wikipedia article, and I dismissed it. I bought these explanations. I was like, okay, this is good enough. And I found it somewhat uncomfortable. Like, I didn't think they were great explanations, and I found it awkward. But basically, what was I going to do? Throw away atheism for this one weird, anomalous story? So, yeah, I mean, to my shame, I just kind of brushed it aside. I said, yeah, this is good enough. I don't know. I don't think it is, but anyway. Okay, so anyway, that's really what I wanted to talk about. Hopefully, like I said, maybe it gave you pause. Maybe it sort of made you say, huh, didn't expect that. Maybe not. All right. If you are intrigued, if this sort of said like, okay, I'm not sold, but this is kind of intriguing at least. You want to know what to do. Like where you can go. There's lots of great resources online. Catholic Answers is supposed to be very good. Ascension Presents on YouTube has a lot of great content, and there's a lot of great content on YouTube in general. This is if you kind of want to learn more about Christianity. Let's see. C.S. Lewis I cannot recommend highly enough. I love this man and his writing. He I read his works on his writing on Christianity about 2 years ago, and I think they planted seeds that put me on the path to where I am today. So Mere Christianity is the best introduction to Christianity that I know of by far. It is an introduction to Christianity in general, sort of a denomination-free Christianity. Sort of that's what he means by mere Christianity. So. I'm saying, I am saying this as a Catholic. As a Catholic, I still recommend Mere Christianity. It's great. And then the Great Divorce and Screw Tape Letters are just these two incredible works of sort of theological fiction. They're just really, really good. They form this like beautiful complementary pair. If you're interested, just I would say talk to Christian friends that you have. Potentially talk to priests and pastors. You could try attending church if you want. And of course, it couldn't hurt to check out the Bible, especially the Gospels. But and sometimes that's not sort of the best introduction, though. But anyway, if you don't want to do any of those things, if that's too much for you, one thing you could do, you could try, is praying. You could try praying. You could do that tonight if you want. Yeah, I mean, so if you, I would highly recommend praying. Just give it a try, just for just for a week or two, 10 days or something. If you've never prayed before, it's very awkward at first. Like it just feels awkward and uncomfortable and silly, like you're just talking to no one. But I would say, it will feel that way, but do it anyway. just try it. Accept that it will feel that way, and give it a try. I mean, I would say that if you being sort of feeling awkward and embarrassed and silly is a terrible reason not to meet the creator of the universe, right? If he exists. So yeah, I don't know. Try praying and just sort of accept that it'll feel awkward at first, but just keep at it. I would say keep it simple, like if you're wondering how to pray, Jesus taught us how to pray. He gave us the Our Father. So just, say the Our Father, that's enough. And then I would say just, try just looking back on your day. Go through your day and sort of think about things that you were grateful for and just sort of give a prayer of thanks. And then, go through your day and sort of think about things that you could have done better. Like do kind of an examination of conscience and sort of say, yeah, like I want to do better tomorrow. So, try those. I think those are just sort of like good things to do. They're generally just psychologically healthy, but maybe try giving like a conditional prayer, especially if you're, kind of skeptical. Just shoot up a prayer that says, God, if you're real, and only if you're real, I want to believe in you. Right? I mean, that's the sentiment that, you should be able to get behind, right? Like, if I maybe I don't think God exists, but if he did exist, yeah, I would want to believe in him. I would want to believe that he existed. That would be, of course, right? So, I mean, this is a prayer that hopefully you can say sincerely with all your heart. This is all. Just, God, if you're real, I want to believe in you. And only if you're real. So, try that. Just say, and then I would say, most importantly, shoot up a prayer and say, God, open my heart. Like, say, God, if first of all, if you exist, but if you exist and sort of, I have a closed heart, and it is me who is the problem, because I have a closed heart, that's why I don't believe in you. If that's the case, I mean, we never really know our hearts. I thought I was sort of open to the idea of God, but I very much was not. My heart was closed. So we never know ourselves. So, if it is something in you that is, blocking you from believing in God, in this, hypothetical world where God exists, maybe you don't believe in God, you would want that part removed, right? You'd say, okay, well, in a world where God existed, and I myself was closing myself off to him, I wouldn't want that part of me, right? So, again, just throw up a prayer that says, yeah, God, if you're real, which I don't think you are, maybe, and, I'm closed off to the idea of you, which I don't think I am, if that's the case, then then open my heart. And that's all you have to do. You just, wait and see. But yeah, I don't know. Again, this is just sort of, if you were intrigued by sort of, any of this tonight, give prayer a try. Here, I think it's very tempting to say, like, it can't hurt. Like, what do you have to lose? Give prayer a try. I really don't like that attitude, though. There's something sort of off to me about it. Like, it's almost saying, like, even in a world where God didn't exist, it would be good to pray, and to pray to God. And that seems to me, that seems to me sort of just not a healthy, that's sort of damaging your relationship with the truth. Like, you should really only pray, you should really only pray if you're sort of like genuinely agnostic. You're sort of saying there is, some chance, maybe a small chance, but some chance that God exists. To sort of say that you should pray anyway just because, like this kind of Pascal's wager type argument. Like, you don't have anything to lose in a world where God didn't exist. No. Then you would be praying to nothing. And, you would be, I don't know, trying to, I don't know. I've just never found, a lot of people say that, you don't have anything to lose, why not just try praying? I don't, if you are 100% sure that God doesn't exist, I don't recommend praying. Just, so. Anyway. Yeah. So, I guess that is, that's more or less all I have to say. This was a very poorly, I did not prepare for this properly, and so this was a terrible live stream, but that's all right. Anyway, this is what I wanted to share. I wanted to start sharing my story, give you this potentially interesting sort of anomaly of this, like, strange miracle that is maybe hard to explain. And time. You have time to lose. Right, Matt says you have time to lose with prayer. That is true. You definitely have time to lose. But I was trying to get at something even stronger than that. Like, it's just, like, it doesn't matter whether God exists. Like, it definitely matters. But anyway. So, I guess that's, more or less all I have prepared. I guess, what else? I don't know. Well, that's a bit. Anyway, so I hope you found that sort of at least interesting. And I don't know if people do have any questions, they can shoot them in the chat, or if you have my if you know me and have my phone number, you can just text me. I won't stay on for too long, but I think so. First and foremost, I guess. So Matt brought up in the chat when I was sort of talking about these, I guess the eyewitness accounts for Fatima. He said, couldn't it also be that people lie and exaggerate? Not just, right, it was in the context of sort of this hysteria and, like that, how strong is the power of suggestion? Could it be that people are also just, they saw, all they did see was just something minor, but, then they wanted to lie and exaggerate. To which I would say, in principle, of course, but I mean, basically just not tens of thousands of people. I do not believe that many people could all be sort of lying and exaggerating. And like I said, there was just hardened, diehard skeptics who, you saw the testimony there. They became instant converts and instant believers. So there was a lot of converts that day. I don't really think that helps you much to sort of. I don't think that people lying and exaggerating is really. I don't think that's what's going on here. But that's just what I think. I don't know. To be convinced, we would want either a lot of evidence or very good evidence, without photographic counter-evidence, for example, or with more self-consistent reports. Yeah, okay, I mean, fair enough. So, with more self-consistent reports. See, that's interesting. I mean, to my mind, what was striking about the reports is, I mean, okay, it's not like they were like all exactly aligned, but they were very consistent, and then, again, they were consistent, separated by in different villages. Like that really does seem difficult to me to explain. So I mean, the consistency of the reports, well, it's maybe not perfect, but like, they all talked about the sun being, this spinning disc, crazy colors, dancing around in the sky, and then sort of coming down to the earth. That's a very sort of strikingly consistent, set of things that couldn't have just, like, how did everyone see that same thing? What, like, how did they all, I don't know, how did they all get that in their head? But anyway, to be convinced, we want either a lot of it. And okay, Andrew, I mean, to be convinced we want either a lot of evidence. I mean, this does seem to me like a lot of evidence, This is sort of, like I said, this is tens of thousands of people unanimously agreeing that there was a miracle kind of exactly when one predicted. There, okay, not unanimously. There's some small amount of people who didn't see it, but, near unanimously. Anyway. Yeah. Oh, Andrew says, by a lot, I mean a lot of miracles anomalies. Yes, okay, that is fair. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I intend to give you. There's a lot more where this came from. In future episodes, I want to show further evidence. No, they're not as sort of like dramatic as Fatima, but yeah, no, there is a lot of other miracles and anomalies and a lot of evidence. So, stay tuned. All right. Well, I think, yeah, I think I'll end it there. If you, if anyone does have any questions, I would say you can email them to me, fosterfaithfriday@gmail.com. And yeah, I hope, I don't know, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it, at least somewhat interesting. And yeah, I hope you join next week. And yeah, thank you all for listening, and God bless. So, good night, everyone.